Hello, everyone. Welcome to our learning call on communicating deliberation, strategies for different information landscape. I'm Angela Jane from the Bertelsmann Stiftung. With me in the room is also Christian from our team and probably also Dominic, I'm not so sure. Together with FIDE, we are running the Network for Citizen Participation and Deliberation in Europe. And in our network, we frequently discuss what is next to work on in our field. And we have found that there is room for improvement in this field of communication. We have covered it a little bit in our guidelines, which we have recently launched. So what is there for communication to be done in the field of outreach and campaigning, but also in media relations and reacting to media feedback. And with this, and without further ado, I would hand over to Yves to welcome you and to introduce the speakers.
Thank you, Angela. So welcome all of you again on a Friday afternoon. A call on communication for the network. And the reason we do a call on communication is because we asked the members of the network what are topics you would want us to organize something on, and communication was very high on that list. Of course, I mean, there's many reasons. I would say two reasons that always come up is one is the scaling, is reaching out to more people, making the assembly known throughout, and that's very often a hard thing to do. So hence the request to learn from some of the better practices out there. And of course, second of all, impact, right? So the scaling and impact and the role of communication in both of these. And so we have invited two great speakers for this with great experience at the national level. So very happy they agreed to be here with us, Lucile Duclaux and Rosalind Grisnicht. Lucile is the project lead in communications at the CESE, the Conseil Économique, Social et Environnemental of France, the third French chamber, which is the place that organizes the citizen assemblies at the national level. So Lucile has done the comms work there on the CESE meetings. And then Rosalind Grisnicht is the communications lead for the Dutch National Climate Assembly, which finished a few months ago, but is still in the follow-up phase. And she will talk a bit about some specific challenges they have had with media, but also a political landscape that was not always really the best of support, but how they managed to overcome that challenge. Before I give the floor to Lucile to kick off the first presentation, two brief announcements. We're recording this call and we will put it on the FIDE YouTube channel. If you really prefer not to be seen on there, we can blur you out. If you don't want your name on there, let us know today. So pop us a quick mail and we will take you out of the call or make you a bit blurred. And then there's a Q&A function. We've normally, if this goes well, we have about 20 minutes for a Q&A at least. And we know many of you have experience in assembly, so you might have a lot of questions. Please put them in the Q&A function so I can take them after the two speakers one by one, and then I'll give you the floor. You can ask your own question, but that gives us a bit of a prioritization. So without further ado, I'm going to give the floor to Lucile Duclaux. Thank you, Lucile. Floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. First thing first, I'm French, so sorry for my English, sorry if I make mistakes. If you don't understand stuff I say, just don't hesitate to ask questions and I will try to clarify. I'll do my best. I'm going to share my screen quickly. And here we go. So I work, as Yves said, at the CESE, also called in English the ESEC, Environmental, Social and Economical Council, in another order, but that's the idea. So we are a constitutional French assembly and we organize citizen assembly. We've already organized 3 citizens' assembly, one on climate, that is pretty well known worldwide, one on end of life, and the latest one on children's time, the organization of their daily life. That's the best translation I could do. I was, and I still am, the communication lead on the Citizens Assembly on end of life and the one on children's time. So that's what I'm going to focus on this presentation because these are the ones I have experience on. So communications on citizen assemblies. It's not like a full guide to do your communication, but this is what we've done at the ESEC to do our best to communicate on citizens' assembly. We have a few points I'm going to talk about in this presentation, and I'm going to, in the first one. What is really important in communication when talking about citizen assembly is, first of all, having a good view on the context. So monitoring and auditing what is said about, first, your topic. So that will depend on the topic of your citizen assembly, but also on the method, on what is said on citizen assembly in your place, country, city, region, because it is really important to know what people feel, think, and already know about what you are going to communicate on, but also identify the people who are already either influencer, but also talking about the same topics. I just put at the end of this slide that a dedicated team is really helpful, of course, but it's not mandatory. It is helpful because it is a big part, this first part of monitoring, because it takes time, but it also takes, I would say, a really precise analysis of what is said. You can use many tools to do that. For example, here in France, we use a French tool called VisiBrain, but there are also other tools that are quite well known in communications. For example, because examples are more, I would say, concrete, on children's time, for us, a huge issue, I would not say issue, but a huge thing we had to think about was how teachers would receive this topic, how they would position themselves, because they were really, really talkative about how we organize children's time. So sorry, the examples are in French, but I'm going to try to translate it the best that I can. But for example, here, this press article is about a trade union's teacher that says that basically a citizen assembly isn't useful and that it will not solve the big emergency of the national education, of the French national education. So when you just say that you're going to organize a citizen assembly on children's time, and that is one of the first articles that just pops, you must be prepared to have arguments, and you must also be prepared for this kind of articles to be written. We were not surprised at all, but you need to have the best answer, because journalists are also going to ask you, so what's your answer to Sophie Venetite positions? Also, not only on the topic, but also on the method itself. What was said a lot about this last citizen assembly was that it was not useful because there were so many reports already. So we had to prove how it is different from an OECD report, and how a citizen assembly can really produce deep thought and propositions that are really worked on, and not only like a cosmetic or some, I don't know how to say, but they are really, really useful. So you need to have an eye on all the social media, on media, and also be prepared to answer to those kind of things. Also, on citizen assembly, because it is our third one, we were prepared on how the French people would feel about a citizen assembly. So you need to already know how your specific public, either it is on your city or on a national level, how do they feel about citizen assembly? Do they think it is useful? Do they think it should be followed by a vote? Because our specificity in France is that it's only consultative, meaning that it's not mandatory for the decision makers, the lawmakers, to take into account the propositions. So how do people feel about that? Because it would really guide how you communicate. For example, for the Citizen Assembly on end of life, many people were really skeptical about Citizen Assembly because of the Citizen Assembly on climate, where there was a huge topic on how the propositions were taken into account or no. So this is really something you must study deeply. Sometimes you don't have any time to do that, because between the time you learn you are going to do a Citizen Assembly and the time it's going to begin, it's really short. But it is really necessary to do this work, to know where you are going to communicate, in which ground you are just setting your feet. Then identify your publics, because communication is not only talking and posting, it's knowing to who you are going to talk, because then depends all the rest. In a Citizen Assembly, you bring a lot of different people together, and they are supposed to reflect the diversity of the place you are going to represent. So for example, for us, the diversity of the French people. So how can we represent that, and how can we talk to all these people who are so different, basically? I think I'm not going to tell you something new, but when you work in communication, what you almost hear all day is, oh, but I want to talk to everyone. I want to talk to the general public. And you're like, okay, that's a lot of people. I don't know how I'm going to do that. So an answer we have to that, it's by targeting specific groups of people. In the end, we are most likely going to talk to the general public. But for that, we really need to highlight the specific groups that are our top priority. Once again, another example on the Citizen Assembly on children's time, of course, our top list targets were teachers, parents, and children and young people themselves. Why? Because they were our kind of three pillars, people that were going either to make the change themselves or to be impacted by these changes. Of course, also the elected people, the decisions maker, and the local elected people on this topic are really important, because they are the one implementing the changes in the law. But we thought that this was another part in communication, because this is something that we don't really do like in the social media, but more of a soft power communication that goes through other channels and means. But it is also important to think about all this, and they are part of the publics you are going to identify and to target with specific means of communication. Then when you've done these things that are already a lot of things to do, you need to have objectives that are set, because if you just then go through communicating with only people you want to talk to, you can go in different ways, not really knowing what really you are going to do. So this is only an example of what we did at the CESE for our two latest Citizen Assembly. I wrote convention, I'm sorry, it's because in French we say convention citoyenne and not assemblée citoyenne, but it's the same thing. So sorry for the different words. But for us, what was really important is transparency, pedagogy, interactivity, and notoriety. I'm not sure it's the good translation, but I can explain them quite quickly for you to be sure we are talking about the same thing. But because we are a public institution, because the Citizen Assembly in France is fed with public money, we had to be fully transparent and fully clear with all the things we do. Why? How? Because every citizen have the right to know what is going on, even though they were not randomly selected. So this is like the central pillar of a communication. And of course, two objectives can work together because it's not one goal, one mean of communication. Sometimes it can cross the different objectives that we set. Another one for us really important was pedagogy, because of all the topics we had, end of life, talking about euthanasia, assisted suicide, is not really easy. Many people at this time didn't know the difference between the two of them, didn't know how the French law was. and it's the same thing on children's time. Many people didn't knew, yes, for example, that for the buses, it's not the mayor, it's the department. For the food in schools, it's the mayor. For sports, it's the region. So there are many different levels in the French administration for each part of children's time. So for us, it was really important, first of all, to make sure that we were all talking about the same thing. Then, of course, interactivity, meaning that when you are randomly selecting less than 200 people, which is already a lot, it's not the whole French population. So there are many people that were not selected, not randomly selected, that might wanted to know what's going on, but who also wants to participate in a way. So the thing is, in communication, it's not only making think people they could participate by just sending a message. It's showing how in different places you can also, if you were not randomly selected, participate in the whole process. It's the whole mini maxi public thing, meaning if you want your communication and then the proposition to feel deeply connected to the concerns of the society, of French society in this case, people must feel in the whole group thing, they must feel part of this process. Otherwise, you will just 6 months later arrive with a full report saying, here you go, you can read it, but most citizens will not feel like they were aware it was going on and that they could also participate, which is the case because we organize, for example, regional workshops, for people to participate if they wanted to. And lastly, because it was our third one, we really wanted to go from people knowing that citizen assembly might exist and that there were something that could occur in France. We really wanted people to know that it is a part of our democratic landscape, that it is useful, and that, of course, we are organizing it as the CESE, and that it is our role, our duty to allow citizens to take part in the public decisions and political decisions. So that's our objective that we've set, that's declined pretty well for all the topics, for us at least. And okay, I don't know how to pass. Okay, so really quickly, it's not all the things you can or you must do in communication, but this is how basically we just put it all the communication tools with or linked to a kind of objectives. This is really not complete or a must, but this is just to give you an idea on where we position each kind of communication with one objective or different objectives. And then when you do that, it again seems for many people that don't work in communication not really intuitive, but it's only when we've done all this that we define where we want to communicate. Because if we start by the where, for example, on citizen assembly on children's time, many people told us, okay, you should definitely go on TikTok because you want to talk to young people, so just go on TikTok. But why? Which young people? What do they do? Where do they live? If you just think of the channel first thing first, it's not going to serve your message, and also you might not touch the people you want to touch with your message. So it's for us, at least, it was really important to, once we've set together, not only us communication team, but with the chairman of the Citizen Assembly, with all the people, the facilitators working in the process, then we make sure that we can, as a communication team, choose the right place to spread our message. Of course, I've only put like social media and the web, but also press relations, comms, and journalists just also goes on this channel. So for us, it was also really important to embody the Citizen Assembly. So that's why we communicated on the CESE socials, so that it is really deeply linked to who we are, and we don't start from zero. But it is also possible because it is what they did on the Climate Assembly. They've just launched some social accounts, and it worked really well. So these are some examples of things we've done. So for each citizen assembly, we've created a website, so it was easier for citizens to Google and to look into all the details of the citizen assembly. So I'm sorry, it's all in French. And it is something that we were told that maybe our websites should have been translated. It's not the case for now, but maybe we'll try for the next ones. So these are some videos and newsletters, so meaning that there are many things then that you can deploy on the channels you've chosen, because they are sometimes more efficient on a kind of channel. Also, I'm just checking the time. Okay. Also, for something that really worked really well for us was what we called in marketing user-generated content. So it's quite an old school term. It's well known, at least, but it's not really seen, at least in France, in institutions. It's really seen in politics. But for institutions, it's harder to embody the message. So for us, what was really useful and what really worked was the fact that the citizens themselves were encouraged to post during the citizen assembly, and they were not left alone, and we just said, okay, post on social media. No, it was for the ones that were willing to communicate on their own experience as a citizen. We would be there for them to help them film some content. We would also cross-post some content for them to promote really their citizen experience. And also, of course, what is really important for us was to have someone that speaks for the citizen assembly. And for us at the CESE, it was always the president. I don't know if it can also called the chairman or chairwoman of the citizen assembly, and she or he was really the one in charge of spreading the messages that were linked to the organization and to really the construction of the whole process of the citizen assembly. But what was really important for us was to let citizens have a look on how we communicate, and have a voice on the communication, because they are the one at the heart of this whole process. So we cannot work without them, of course. So these are some a few examples of things we did on the citizen assembly. On Children's Time, of course, we had children working with us, because we could not do. There was already workshops in December, I think, on these specific topics. But of course, for us, it was also really important to let them communicate on what they did. On the left, it's the chairman of the Citizen Assembly on Children's Time. Another example, on the left, it's the promotion of one aspect of the report. So for each propositions, we had a citizen explain what was the proposition and why they did. And on the right, it's more of a personal thing, because one of the citizens was pregnant at the beginning of the citizen assembly, and she gave birth during, not at the CESE, but during the whole process. And so we really wanted her to explain how it went for her and how she managed all this, and also if it's motivated her to participate in the citizen assembly. So it is really good to navigate between institutional and more formal content, but also true story. I don't know if it's the real word, but things that really shows who the citizens are, because this is how other people would feel linked to them. One other thing that is also important for us is what we call safeguards, meaning when you set all your communication strategy, you must also have boundaries, things that you know you will not go beyond or that you will strictly apply. For us, for example, there was a strict process with the press, because with journalists, because sometimes they could be quite intrusive in the citizens' life. They would want to know who they were, dig into their life, and also know their position, their personal position, even before the end of the process. So there are things we put into place, such as the anonymity for all citizens, meaning no last names. The only exceptions was when they wanted to tell their last names. We were not saying, "Oh no, you cannot." we are saying it's forbidden, but we would never give their last names. And also there was a strong support system, meaning all the questions the press would have, it will go through the communication department. We also did some workshops dedicated to communications. There were one in the first session, but we were there the whole time. So when people had questions, they would just go and ask to us. And one thing that was really, really important is what we call, I don't know if it's the right one in English, embargo on decisions, meaning until the end, no propositions, no decisions were released. It's really hard to maintain this embargo, but it is really important because if you don't do it, it happened in the Citizen Assembly on end of life. Sometimes journalists might release some votes that goes in between the process and would say, okay, it's over, they've decided. So it's really something important so the citizens feel comfortable because it is a collective decision. I don't feel like everything is already spoiled, even though it's not over. So this was things that were really important for us in terms of boundaries, safeguards. So I'm going to go quickly on this because I think my time is almost over, but you can just go through the 5 minutes. Perfect. The slides will be given to you, so you can go through this. Some things are still in French. I'm sorry, but I think you can understand with intensity. But what was really important for us once we've done all these things was planning ahead what we would do. We cannot plan every post for 6 months ahead, and because the decisions are not made from the citizens, but we can guess the tendencies of our communications highlights. From our experience, the first and the last session, of course, are the ones with the most interest from the media, but also where we have a lot of things to tell, because on the first session citizens arrive, on the last we have the reports, but it is also important to think what you are going to do on the in-between, because you cannot only communicate, you can, but that's not what we've done and how it worked for us. But if you only communicate once in the beginning and once in the head, you just leave a full no man's land between these two dates, and it can be quite tricky because the whole process of what makes a citizen assembly is what is in these crucial sessions. So I'm going to just show you for us what were the main things we've did. Of course, it's not complete. It's not everything we've done because I could not fit it in the slides, but I'm going to go quickly. So for us in the beginning, it was really spark interest, just rise the interest of citizens, but also of the media. The launch, which was really an event for us because we want to gather many people. Everyone could subscribe and assist at the launch of the Citizen Assembly. Then the deliberative stage, so the in-between, is really where we have a lot of work to do with all the hearings, all the people talking to the citizen to make it accessible to other people. But also this is where we will film and create all the content with the citizens. And then, of course, the vote of the report. This is where we spend also a lot of money, because this is where we can really do a poster campaign, where we can just do some partnerships with media to highlight all the works that the citizens have done. And this is where we want really to bring to life the proposals of the citizen, because it is all the results of their hard work. So to conclude, how to communicate on a citizen assembly. It's not easy, and it takes a lot of time because you need to be there almost during the whole process and during the whole sessions. And for us, for example, it meant being there for 7 or 9 weekends. So you need to be prepared to that, or sometimes evening, it really depends. But it is important to be there so people know who you are. They are trusting you, and also you can really work with the citizen in the best ways possible because you know what they are talking about. You just don't come on a random day saying, okay, let's do a video, and you just tell me what's going on. If you do that, it can work, but it will not be as efficient as it could be. Of course, you can plan everything ahead and think it will go just as planned, but it rarely does because the political context can change. For us, for example, the Prime Minister, who is the one asking the question to the Citizen Assembly, changed in the middle of the Citizen Assembly. So we were like, okay, perfect. Maybe the next one will not care, but we don't know. It also depends a lot of the citizens themselves, because some of them will be really shy. Some of them also will be really suspicious, because, for example, on a political context where trust is less and less strong, how can people trust you as an institution or as the organizer of the Citizen Assembly? So you will have to adapt a lot, and it will be like that. Just don't blame yourself. You will have to adapt a lot. And the last thing, of course, communications is a job. Many people today can film videos, they can write articles, they can post on social media, and it's great. But you can, of course, let other people help you with this kind of stuff. But just like facilitators, just like fact checkers, just like all the people that compose the Citizen Assembly, communication is part of the whole architecture of a Citizen Assembly. It's not a bonus. It's not something you do in the end just to say, okay, we've done it, we've published it on the website. If you do that, of course, if you cannot do otherwise, it's okay. But if you can just really build a communication strategy, this is how a Citizen Assembly can be really successful. And this is how the decision makers and the politics cannot say, okay, I don't care, I've not seen it. Of course, they can do it. But if you brought together this many people and publics, of course, the pressure will be higher on the decisions being taken into account. So don't minimize the role of a communication officer, because it is truly one of the pillars of a Citizen Assembly, because you are the voice with the citizen, of course, and with other people of what is going on in a Citizen Assembly and how it is told all over your country, maybe, and sometimes at the international, just like here. So you really are important on the whole process of a Citizen Assembly. I hope it's good for the time.
Thank you very much, Lucile. That was great, perfectly in time, very informative, very dense. I see there's 2-3 questions at the moment. So I would encourage people, there's still some time to post questions if you have them. I'll take those at the end because maybe both of you will want to intervene. So without too much ado, I will give the floor to Rosalind Grisnicht. We asked Rosalind to not redo the whole strategy, to not twice have a full strategy. Rose, you had a few challenges, a few specific elements during the Climate Assembly. So floor is yours, and happy to hear about your communication challenges and strategies.
Okay, thank you very much. So the questions and answers we'll do afterwards. Also the questions for Lucile. Okay, then I will share my screen.
Mute me.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Yes. We had a pretty political turmoil during the first Dutch National Citizens Assembly. In the Netherlands, many things happened. You probably heard of it. So I'll try to focus on the political context, and I'll just give you some main strategy pillars, because it is good to know what we did, and then I'll explain something about how we handled all the negative and especially negative feedback we had. Okay, in short, we started in January 2025, but the preparations started 1.5 years before that, because of the falling of the cabinet, we had to postpone. Anyway, we started in January, so the Citizens Assembly worked last year on making an advice. 175 citizens worked on the question, how can we as the Netherlands eat food, use products and travel in a way that is better for the climate? As I heard from NOCA, that is the knowledge network on citizens assemblies. This is the largest national assembly that was organized in Europe. So that was a challenge as well. The 170 citizens came in 7 weekends together, and they came to 13 really impactful recommendations that reflect the voices of all the people in the Netherlands. They presented the recommendations in December 2025 to the cabinet. Even the Prime Minister was there, and also to the House of Representatives. And we had special attention to find as diverse group as possible. So we selected them at random, and the citizens came from all across the country. They were young and old. They were from cities and from towns, and also they had a wide range of view on climate policy. So the progressive ones, but also the people who don't believe in climate change. So that was a challenge too. We paid special attention to the mandate, that it would be really, really strong, because that is a really important success factor. So the House of Representatives has an obligation to discuss the advice, and the cabinet has an obligation to state the reasons why they will not or will follow the advice. During the periods that we were busy with the Citizens Assembly, we had 3 cabinets. So that really influenced the timeline of the assembly. We wanted to start earlier, but it wasn't possible. It also meant that the political course changed, because we got a question from our minister Rob Jetten, who is a pretty progressive minister. And when the Citizens Assembly had to come together, it was a really right extremist cabinet, actually. When we started in January, we really asked the Minister of Economics and the Minister of Internal Affairs to attend and do the kickoff and show the participants that they were really involved in the work they were about to do. So we got a lot of media attention, because when you have ministers, then you always get media attention. But the downside of that was that the leader of the biggest political party immediately tweeted, "Guys, we have to throw the advice in a bin immediately." So that was the start, and it wasn't a really good start. There were also in the last year, we had 2 motions in the House of Representatives to stop the assembly. Those were rejected. We had 1 motion to reject additional funding, we really needed that because we had to postpone the assembly because of the political turmoil. But that was accepted, and that meant that we had not really much funding. And also, of course, because the politics didn't support, well, many participants asked questions about the political follow-up. I will focus on the strategy for the Maxi Public. It's actually based on 3 pillars, and because we didn't have a lot of funding, we actually had to focus mainly on earned communication, so free publicity. Besides that, we had our own communication, so we had our website, we had a newsletter, we use social media, and we really try to show everything that happens. We recorded on video and we showed to the Maxi Public. So there was nothing in a black box, it was all open. And please check out our website because it's really, well, it's really nice to follow. We had a bit of money for a paid media campaign, but we focused on reaching the people that the government usually doesn't reach. And we also did a public, well, the assembly asked for a public consultation, and there were 35,000 respondents, and that was also a way of reaching the Maxi Public and actually giving them also a way of doing something and also giving a voice. Diversity and inclusion was really key in our communication strategy. We used a test panel of all kinds of people, people who were not good educated, couldn't read good, had a young, old, well, many people, one with a physical disability. So all kinds of peoples we tested the communications on. We also really paid attention on our language to make that really simple. And that is a challenge when you work at the government. It's really a challenge. We use a lot of visuals to make our communications easy to understand. We really focus on transparency, well, the same as Lucile also told. We try to be as accessible as possible. We even opened a special 1400 number, and we focused on personal contact. So when we send the invitation to the selected group of people, we also went to all kinds of neighborhoods and try to get in touch with them and get into talks with them to tell them how to, okay, thank you, to explain to them in person why it's so important to give your voice, and also to understand what are the barriers you experience not being able to participate. Well, the results were that we had a lot of media attention during the kickoff. During the start of the assembly, the public consultation was a really good way of getting media attention, and also the presentation of the recommendations. It also led to a lot of discussions on social media, positive and a lot of negative as well. Issues were, for instance, this is a left expensive hobby, participants are not neutral and selected participants are being brainwashed, it is not democratic, an assembly, we have to have a referendum instead of such an expensive instrument. And we noticed that climate change is a really intensely polarized theme. So doing the first national climate citizens assembly on climate was a challenge as well. How did we try to cope? with all the negative attention and all the political, well, the lack of political backup, we really try to focus in our communication on the diversity of the participants. We made participant portraits on video. We made infographics to show that it was like the society, but then small. We made sure that the knowledge provision was really diverse, and the assembly could choose their own experts. That is also unique. So we also invited experts that spread disinformation. That was a big challenge, and we really try to be as transparent as possible on the knowledge that the participants got. We invited politicians actively to attend the assembly meetings. Well, the politicians that shout the loudest, to say, don't show up. That is also really typical to see. We made questions and answers on all the issues that we monitored and we spread that on social and via the websites. We actually always answered questions, but neglected opinions because there were a lot of opinions, and we had to stop the reactions at X because participants were being called land traders and all that, so that could be really nasty. And you also have to have a thick skin, because when you monitor all the attention, well, it can get into your system. My time is up, I think. Those are the lovely 175 people who joined the Citizens Assembly. And okay. I thank you for your attention, and I'm really looking forward to your questions.
Thank you, Rose. It's always too little time. In the end, you plan these things, but we have loads of questions. In the beginning, it took a bit of time for them to get, and we can extend a little bit. Those of you who have to go, but if possible, we can extend five minutes. Or Philip, you were the first one. You want to ask the question yourself? Philip, you work in Sweden. You have a question on bait. You're unmuted. Go ahead. And be short. There
we go. Can you hear me?
Yeah, there you go.
All right, perfect. Yes, so this is mainly a question in a context where citizen assemblies aren't necessarily that well known. And my issue that I have is that I want to have outreach and to get input from different stakeholders, from civil associations, business groups, things like this. Could we use communication to get out there, take a position, gain, feedback, other groups taking position, and then invite them into a reference group or some type of consultation group to co-design the process? Or do we need to have that group formed before we go out with the communication?
Okay, thank you, Philip. I don't know who of the two wants to take this. Rose, Lucile?
I think it is a strategic question. I think Lucile could answer that.
So we did it on the Citizen Assembly on Children's Time. So what we did was the president of the CESE sent an invitation to all the stakeholders that we had identified as the communication team. And he invited them to 3 meetings during the process. They were also invited to witness all the sessions. And what we did for them to participate is that on the Citizen Assembly website, they had a space for them called, I don't remember how we called it, but it was like contributions, external contributions. Maybe my translation is bad, sorry. And there they could put, we made a form where they could put all the things they wanted to say to the Citizen Assembly. And some of them, of course, just put it their whole keywords and elements they put everywhere, but it was really good because they could not told us in the end that they were not given any space to say what they wanted to say, because we could not hear all of them in a public hearing. It's hard how we've done for them to have a sense of participating also, and because they're not as other citizens, like French citizens, they had a kind of special treatment where they could meet with our president and the chairman of the Citizen Assembly, and that's how we've done. But of course, in the end, some of them still went and talked to journalists and said that, oh, but we've said that to the citizen, but they didn't take it into account. And we're like, yeah, that's the game. They have free will. So, but at least they have their own space somewhere in the official website, proving that they were heard and that they could prove their points. And that's how I don't know if I answered your question right.
Yeah, you did. You did.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lucile. Jane Mansbridge, I think for you, it's still early morning. You had several questions. Maybe you can focus on one or two main ones. I'll take your first question maybe because we can't seem to unmute you. I think this was during Lucile's presentation. Say a bit more about shared by the citizens themselves, right? Do they check the content first? Do you have a bit of oversight, or is it just out?
In the first workshops we did on communication,
no, we didn't.
We told them clearly what they could say and what they couldn't say on social media. There was only one thing they could not say. It was what other citizens.
Sorry.
It was what you can hear me. It's okay.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Okay. It was what other citizens would say during the debates, and also the votes and what they would personally think on the topic that were debated. Otherwise, they could share anything they wanted. And if they wanted to reveal that they were part of the Citizen Assembly, so giving their last name, it's their free will and they could do whatever they wanted. But on our side, we would never give their last name to anyone. About posting on social media, when we gave them this rule, it's kind of a contract between us and them. So then we trust each other on this basis. But when they wanted to post more, I would say, elaborate content, for example, I would take an example, I don't know if it's the English word, but a vlog of their of a day in the Citizen Assembly. If they want to, they could show it to us, and we would say if there were things that might feel uncomfortable for other citizens. And we could also help them, for example, doing subtitles or doing more dynamic cuts on the video, but that's the only thing we would do. And then they could post it on their social media. And some of them really became, I would say, ambassador. Some of them were more focused on LinkedIn because they would feel like it was a professional thing. And other, especially the youngest ones, were more on Instagram and TikToks.
Okay. Thank you. Maybe the next one, Joanne. So if you have a question, apparently you are unblocked. So just you can start speaking normally. Joanne, you have one on media logics.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. The question is whether people who are organizing citizens' assemblies, democratic innovations, should somewhat adapt themselves to the media logics, who prefer flashy headlines, who are not as much into nuance, who like a hero, a success story, rather than to talk about the collective as a whole.
You're right. In the end, some newspaper would only put on their title, the Citizen Assembly says that school must stop earlier. This was one proposition on the 25 propositions that were given. But our role was to, first of all, prepare the citizen for what was obviously going to happen, because how you said that press logic work in a way, and of course journalists, they have some things they must do. They also have their own work, and our role was to make sure that the citizen would understand what was most likely to happen, meaning only some propositions might get the big head titles. For example, on end of life, it was about assisted suicide and euthanasia, and all the other things on care for the other people, curing some health issues, they were treated, but in a more minor way. And on children's time, of course, they were going to talk about school, but there were many other topics, for example, association, sports, but we were prepared for this. So you must not feel surprised, and your role is to identify which topics are going to be more likely highlighted by the press. You, as a communication officer, your role is to always remind the journalists that it's not the only point of the citizen assembly. So you are going to try to do your best to always explain to them, no, but it is a part of a group of proposition. It cannot work just by itself. And also, what really worked well for us is that I wouldn't say we chose the journalists, but of course, during the sessions, there will be journalists that will come every weekend. And they are the ones who have the best understanding. So the papers they will release are the ones, maybe they might not be the most read ones, because sometimes they are smaller media, but then these are the papers we as an institution are going to put on the lights on our website, because they are the more detailed one about the method, about how the citizens thought their propositions. But it's the two that works the best, because of course you need to have big titles that might be quite polarized, but that at least talk about you. But your role is kind of to counterbalance with all of the kind of press and other journalists that are going to talk about it in a different ways, I would say.
Okay, thank you, Lucille. We're almost at the end. I think I'm just going to take the questions to speed it up a bit. Andre had a question about focus on the pros and cons, not just the recommendations, but the motivations behind the recommendations. How do you communicate those? Not just we should eat less meat or we should do this, but what the reasoning about this is. How did you, and again, feel free, both of you, to come in. I'm not going to. So did you work specifically in communicating the reasoning of citizens behind this kind of like why, the why of Lucille?
We had in our reports,
we
had a focus on the why, but we let the participants themselves write the why and also the recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't told them how to frame a recommendation, and we also didn't do that in our media strategy. So we're really open, and because we are now in the follow-up phase, I noticed that we are now focused on the why, more on the why than on the content of the recommendation, because the why is about system change, and that is something that's really needed.
Okay. Thank you. We are at the hour. I'll do 5 minutes more if that's okay for the speakers. Those who have to go, we understand. I'll go next to a question from Tessa Dunlop, who works at the Joint Research Center of the European Commission, and it's about impact. Do you measure impact? How do you? What kind of tools do you use to check for your impact?
Surprise, surprise. Can you hear me?
Okay, Tessa. Yeah.
We're doing the impact report, which is, yes, my mind is in impact. It's a horrible question. This link to this, which is, how do you know that your communication strategy has been a success? That's not exactly what I'm getting at. I'm more interested to know, like, how do you link your objectives to your specific tools for, like, analyzing so-called impact? You have the obvious social media impressions, etc., but do you have any more kind of tools that make more meaning for you in terms of understanding the how you've achieved your objectives? For example, the public consultation I found really interesting.
I will take our example quickly. We work each year with a survey called CEVIPOF, so it's about political trust in general in France. And since last year, they've added into the whole questions they're asking 3 questions about citizen assembly. The first one is, do you know what is a citizen assembly? And so it really helped us measure how just the fact that people know what it is and that it is taken place into France. And we've seen a clear rise between the Assembly on Climate and the one on end of life. So we'll wait next year to see if there is an upgrade between the one on end of life and the one on children's time, because it ended in December, so it was too late to put it into the survey for this year. But we clearly see a rise, but the number can be quite. I don't think it's low, but you can feel it in the overall population. But for us in France, it's 67% of people know what is a citizen assembly and think it is a good tool for public decisions. So for us, it's already a big win, because there is still a lot of people that feel it is useful, but we still have like the kind of gray zone where people just don't know what it is and don't know what I think about it. So this is how we measure on a bigger scale our impact. But of course, what is really more our daily life as a communication team is measuring the views, but not only the views, the interaction is what we really care about, because if we make content that people just see and scroll, it's not really what we care about. We really care about, I would say, not good, but what could be considered as the top interaction, meaning comments, sharing. Like is also something we take into account, but we really care about a strong engagement. Sorry.
Rose, you have anything you want to add to that?
Well, to be honest, we also try to monitor our social media, but I don't have the capacity to do more. And the public consultation that I mentioned was not on the impact of communication, but in the public consultation, the participants asked about what does Dutch people think is important regarding the question that the citizens assembly was asked. So that was it had a different goal, but it helped us to reach the maxi public.
We're almost at the end. There is one more question from Zeynep. I'll just take one from Rose to Lucile. I saw in the chat, but I'll ask the two of you just for our audience. How big was your team about, if I can ask, for both of you? Like, I think it's good to know from our public, how many people did you kind of have around you to do this, Lucile?
We were 5, my director, me, another person helping me with social media only on the weekends, someone for the press relations, and someone just to film the live broadcasts. So the thing is, I would say 4, because, for example, the person on social media was not a full-time, and the person for the live broadcast was only there when there were public hearings. So you can adjust this kind of thing, but we were 4, not full-time, because we still work for the CESE during the week time, but I think it's the case for almost everyone working on a citizen assembly. You still have other stuff to work on, but we were, so yeah, 4 to 5.
Rose?
We had a dedicated team of 3 persons.
Yeah, okay.
So 1 communication lead, 1 senior, and 1 junior advisor / social media.
Okay, thank you. That gives a bit of clarity in this. Zeynep, I'm going to give you the last question, but could you maybe pick one of them, because it's very broad and several questions. So yeah, we're really running to the end of this. Thank you.
Follow up. So yeah, about the impact. So do you also see an increase with like political efficacy or turnout within this assemblies after this communication strategies? Like, does it even have an impact, not only because people know more about this, but they are also willing to participate, which is, as a political scientist, for me, the most important question.
I think
for us, it's too early to say that, because we're still in the middle of the follow-up.
And what survey was the one that you mentioned? Is it like a public survey?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's. I think I can write it. Maybe it's CEVIPOF, so CEVIPOF.
Okay.
Of course, it's in French, but it's ruled by Sciences Po, so a political sciences school, and they do it every year. And we are in partnership with this. But if you want, I can send you the link. And so they do now new questions on citizen assembly.
Okay. I'm going to thank Lucile and Rose at this point to even stay a little bit longer. Rose has told us at the start of this that her pet is sick and she really will need to hurry after this to the vet. So thank you for staying with us. Thank you all. We have a recording of this. So I saw several people exchanging emails in the chat. So I think this has been a very fruitful conversation. Thank you so much, Rose and Lucile. We will keep you up to date. And everything will be available soon on our channels. Thank you. Have a good weekend, all of you, and see you soon. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.